This week on New to You, Woe Yuletide Them, Part 1, A Christmas Dream. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the New to You Show. I'm one of your hosts, John Holt, with me.
One of your other hosts, Keith Vincent.
And your other host, Julian Cage, and special guest this week,
Dan McCoy. Hello.
Welcome, Dan.
Welcome, Dan. How's it going?
All right. It's a little tiring. It's right after the Thanksgiving holiday. I'm getting back into the swing of work and stuff.
Before the big
Yuletide
holiday.
Huge break that we get.
Is it Daniel?
I was called Daniel all through my youth because I felt that Dan was diminutive.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care for it. But then as I grew older, I was like, oh, people use a nickname because they like you. I learned that, so I accepted
And for efficiency.
it. Yeah.
All right, well, that's enough about Dan.
Sure.
So,
Welcome to the show. We're big
but
fans.
Dan, you do a podcast called The Flophouse.
Yeah. It's a podcast where we watch a bad movie and then we talk about it.
All right, and you guys have been doing that for nigh on a decade.
Yeah, just over 10 years now.
Podcast pioneers.
I mean, I think that I owe our success entirely to the fact that there weren't that many of us when we started. So,
And it's
Trailblazing.
good.
yeah, well, we learned to make it good over the years. I think the lack of competition really helped.
And you are a writer right now on The Daily Show?
On The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. Watch it on your Comedy Central if you have it, or on the computer where you don't need to have Comedy Central. You can just go on comedycentral.com.
Or Hulu, right?
It used to be on Hulu. We used to be the most popular late night show on Hulu, and then Viacom and Hulu had a dispute over
divorce.
revenue, and so it's taken off there now.
It's removed.
Just go to the website.
I think that's when I pretty much stopped watching Hulu.
Was when that was off?
Yeah, and plus they wanted me to start paying money. Like jerks. So
Yeah.
what is this Yuletide? What are you talking? What is this called? This theme.
Well, how about
Let's
this?
get into it.
I'll get into my pick, and I'll explain
Okay.
that out in the beginning. We are a review and recommendation
what we do.
podcast where we review and recommend things to you. And
Usually we
what
give good reviews because it's
Right.
stuff we like.
Well, the key to this podcast is that we give you all the information you need and usually spoil most of the stuff.
So you don't even have to see the thing.
Right.
You just have to trust that it's good.
Yeah.
And so
Or-
next time you can tell your friends, yeah, it's good. I heard somebody talk about it.
I read an article about it in my ears.
Yeah. So now there's a chill in the air.
Oh, right.
It's beginning to feel a lot like Yuletide.
Yeah, so...
Are we saying Christmas or just out of rebellion are we
I don't know.
not
Well, here,
saying
let
Christmas?
me roll into my pick, and I'll explain things again. How's that sound?
Tonight, Mr. T and Emmanuel Lewis star. He's a big guy with a tough little problem.
A kid that doesn't care too much about Christmas.
Mr. T needs some heavyweight magic to fill this tiny Scrooge with the Christmas spirit.
Because I don't want to lose this one.
He's got singing star Maureen McGovern to help,
Sleigh bells ring.
along with skating superstars Ty Babylonia and Randy Gardner, and famous illusionist David Copperfield.
Wow.
My pick this week is the 1984 NBC holiday special, 44 minutes with commercials, 44 minutes without commercials, whatever. It's Mr. T and Emmanuel Lewis and Maureen McGovern.
And that ventriloquist guy.
And it was actually kind of like a highlight period for NBC and TV. Like Webster was big and doing good. It launched in 1983. A-Team had launched in 83. Two big
Mr. T at his
stars.
height and Emmanuel Lewis at his height.
Which is not very tall.
Right.
Yeah.
But they were like, let's give these guys a Christmas special.
Yeah.
Match
and
made in heaven.
It's like filmed in and around Rockefeller Center. So you are right there on the ice rink. You're right there in front of the Rockefeller Tower. And they go to Radio City Music Hall. So it's very New York as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the basic story is a lost kid who's sort of like...
He's a little bah humbuggy.
Yeah, he's like a latchkey kid. He makes that very clear when he says, "I'm a latchkey kid." to Mr. B.A. Baracus.
Emmanuel Lewis does not mince words.
Yeah. He was 12 or 13 years old at the, in and around there. So he's about 12, 13 when he's making this movie. But he's pretty young, but he still looks like maybe a 6-year-old, something like that.
Well, I think people know who Emmanuel Lewis is. I don't think we have to explain.
What his deal is.
Yeah. I mean, Emmanuel Lewis was a guy. Webster was sort of the second show of white parents adopting black children.
It was their answer to Different
Right.
Strokes. I think it was Different Strokes was on CBS, and
Yeah.
and I think NBC was like, well, we can do that. We can find our own short kid.
And he had, he had Ma'am and somebody else. But he was like,
Wasn't the story about that too? That like it was definitely like the guy wanted it to be like a story about him and his wife, and he's like, once they added Emmanuel Lewis, they're like, let's definitely not make this into a show about Webster. And then of course the show was like titled Webster and became all about Webster.
and he's like the heart of the show. too.
Yeah.
Like, he
So
was
that's
pretty
true.
endearing.
Like when they originally
believe
developed the
so,
show.
yeah.
That's so funny. And someone was like, put Webster in there, but it's not about him. He's
Yeah.
just there for some special sauce.
But I mean, he's like 11 or 12 when they're starting to make Webster, and he looks like a very small
Like
child.
6 or 7, yeah.
And is also like Gary Coleman from Different Strokes, the same pattern of like casting a child who is a young, like, who's a pubescent person who's never going to get any bigger.
Yeah.
A lot of formulas playing out there.
Well, and another formula where it's kind of like a white couple adopt an African American kid.
Yeah, let's reboot the entire genre of little person plays black child to white couple. Now's the time, right?
There's a void screaming out for this.
Yeah.
Around this time, he was like very good friends with Michael Jackson and was like going to the set of Thriller. They were
Like
like going
Pepsi
to Disney
commercials
together.
together.
Well, that's kind of the weird thing too. During that Pepsi fire incident, when his hair burned, MJ went and stayed with Emmanuel Lewis's family to recover. And it was like only in like the late 90s, or I don't know, like early 90s rather, when he was like checking the two of them into a hotel and like calling Emmanuel Lewis's son, that they were like, yeah, this isn't a healthy relationship.
Wow, really?
But like, it's a weird thing because you just,
I felt that's too bad because Emmanuel Lewis they were probably chums.
They were friends.
They knew
and
each other for a long
he
time.
He defended him a lot in interviews, but there were, I don't know. I mean, now we're all of them more sensitive to stuff like that. So I think a lot of stuff came out eventually, and it casts a lot of doubt on. their
But getting
relationship.
back to Christmas.
Yeah. So this little boy finds an older man who's a stranger and befriends him.
And that man is Mr. T.
Then that's okay for some reason. No one seems to be bothered by the fact that Mr. T is just carting Emmanuel Lewis around town.
Right. I'll show you my
And
friends.
coaxing his parents' phone number out of him.
Took him on a carriage ride.
Well, a carriage ride too that seemed to have gone like around the block, and then they got out and walked to Radio City. So it was, I guess, like sort of a romantic tour of the block, and then back again, around again.
That was the 80s. You could do that on a horse.
Yeah.
In New York.
He's now an adult. He's an active Freemason and a Taekwondo artist. Emmanuel Lewis. So there you go.
Okay. He leads a rich, full life then.
Yeah.
Our other star is our buddy
Mr. T.
Mr. T. Lawrence Turode.
Wow, that's his real name, Lawrence.
Lawrence Turode. When he says in this movie, he kind of introduces himself to Webster and is like, or to Emmanuel Lewis, and says like, or his name Johnny, and says like, my parents we lived in the projects, but he did. He grew up in the projects. He saw a lot of crime, and he saw how his parents were treated. And
So this Christmas special is like 100% biographical.
Oh yeah, this happened to Mr. T. But he's got a crazy life where he grew up, in the projects. He saw how his parents were treated, and he decided, when I go out there, I'm gonna make my name Mr. T, because then the first thing they say to me, they don't say
Mr.
boy, they call me Mr. So that was his like empowerment. And then like his gold chains, he was a bouncer for a long time and a bodyguard, and those gold chains were stuff he would take off people, or like people would drop it.
They were like trophies?
Trophies, yeah.
He's like Boba Fett, but instead of like Yetis.
And he
skins.
was like very, like his hair was shaved in a
Mohawk, we'll call it.
But it's like, it's a specific like African tribal haircut that like, again, embodies strength. And the chains were also like, he would like sleep in them sometimes to
get used to it.
Well, no, to like evoke what his ancestors went through, to like to have lived their lives in chains. So he's a pretty.
You've done some interesting research on Mr. T for this
Mr. T.
TV special.
There's one story about Mr. T I know is my first college roommate was a came from a fairly wealthy family, and so he lived kind of on the North Shore in Chicago, in the suburbs up there. And apparently, like, Mr. T lived up there too. And like, once he was wealthy, and Mr. T, and he apparently like went out with a chainsaw and just cut down all of the trees on his property, and everyone was furious about it. Like,
super mad, yeah.
Yeah.
Why did he do that?
He's Mr. T. No one tells him what to do.
He was tired of all the trees.
He also had a history of it, because when he was in the army,
he pitied those trees.
He had a spectacular record, but for some punishment, he was told, go cut trees. And they come back, and they hadn't told him when to stop, and so he had cut down like 70 trees. Like
he was in the military.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So he's led a storied life.
So the A-Team is also semi-biographical.
Sure.
Well, the Mr. T story that I heard is that he was an extra in Blues Brothers. In that scene where they're driving in Chicago to the building, you can see him blurrily jumping out of the path of the car.
That's awesome.
Mr. T.
And he was like the boxing wrestler on WWF for a while. Like,
I think that was after Rocky.
Yeah.
Rocky 3.
Yeah,
which was
Rocky 3 was pretty close on the. Actually, it was just before this. So he played Clubber Lang in '82.
That was his breakout.
Yeah.
What do you predict, Clubber? I predict pain.
Yeah, whatever. Enough about him. BA, he kind of makes nods in this Christmas special.
Bad attitude.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he makes nods to Mr. T, and like one of the ventriloquist dummies is a Mr. T.
Yeah.
And he like yells at him. I forget his name in this movie, where it's like Frank or something.
They just credit him as Santa on IMDb.
All right.
Yeah, I think he is nameless. I think he's like the spirit of Christmas kind of thing.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, he is dressed like Santa for some reason.
Yeah, I think he's like kind of doing the Salvation Army collecting money thing.
Yeah, but then some dude runs him off. Is like, this is my spot.
No, his like shift is over.
Oh, gotcha.
And that's like him and Emmanuel Lewis. That's when they like hang out. I mean, he's like, I'm going to change. And he comes back in his like dock worker's uniform / workout clothes. And they go like traipsing around the block. They stop for a second to watch.
So detailed. This is like the most detailed rundown of anything we've ever done.
Well, it's just so weird. They go.
Well, it's because they don't do a whole lot.
Yeah. Then they go to this, like they just kind of stop and watch the ice skating rink and watch these two professional skaters. And in the original, they dance to Randy Newman's theme to Ragtime. That's the music. But
what does that mean in the original?
Like, whatever links I've been able to find, whoever
when it originally aired on TV.
Whoever's posted it put like a royalty-free track in there.
Yeah, otherwise it gets pulled for music.
Well, I would have assumed that it was illegally put up there in the first place.
Right.
Like, so they're like, I'm going to illegally put this up there, but I'm going to make sure it's copyright safe.
I don't think Emmanuel Lewis is complaining that his work is out there.
I think it's just that music gets automatically detected or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Speaking of music, we have Maureen McGovern singing quite a few songs in this one. She wrote or like performed the theme for Poseidon Adventure and also the theme for Towering Inferno. And she did
an interesting niche she has.
And she also was in this Christmas Disaster.
Earthquake.
She did a recording of Can You Read My Mind for the 1978 Superman movie.
That's her?
Yeah. Well, no. She did another like one that was released
she
on
did
a single.
Yeah, because in the movie, it's just Margot Kidder just kind of like speaking.
Right.
Can you
spoken
read
word.
my mind?
Yeah.
And so she sang the like.
I cite
version.
that scene often when people try to say that like some other Superman movie's not as good as that one. I'm like, well, wait a second.
Well, basic story. This kid is kind of like lost-ish, more like he's just maybe run away from home or just like not.
I think that's kind of the
not
indication
gone home.
is that he's.
Because he's like tired. His parents work all the time, and
he's fed up.
It's a pretty modern, like, latchkey kids were, all the kids who were sitting there watching TV were probably latchkey kids in the 80s.
Yeah, that's a pretty broad generalization.
Yeah, every single child.
Well, I think he's alone because his parents are working.
Yeah. So he's just got out of school.
Yeah.
Instead of going home, he's hanging around.
And he's
Midtown Manhattan.
Oh wait, they also go to F.O. Schwartz. And they see David Copperfield creeping on a girl. And then
he does a trick with cigarette, right?
He puts a cigarette through the coin, which is like the cheapest trick that you can like get at any magic store.
That's right, yeah.
Well, plus he's lighting up in F.A.O. Schwartz.
Right. To do a trick for a kid. Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Listen.
Oh, and there's
a
snorks.
void where cigarette magic has disappeared.
Yeah.
PC culture is ruining cigarette magic. I'm gonna put my foot down.
And lift it and have a lit cigarette underneath.
Yeah.
In the F.O. Schwartz, you can like see some of the toys. Like when he's going up the escalator, there are a bunch of snorks, like plush snorks hung on the thing.
Mhm.
I don't know. I didn't see many other toys. I tried to look for them, but the resolution of this show is hard to find.
And the sound quality also poor.
Yeah. They sing a bunch of songs. It's initially kind of like a good, like, friendship on Christmas and, like, kind of a secular, like, be thankful for the people
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like, it's still Christmassy, but then it takes a turn into, actually, it tries to. Like, Mr. T talks about the mysteries of,
Well, at the end, it's a
pageant.
full-on, like,
Yeah,
Jesus was born, and
Right.
he's the most powerful thing ever.
that's what I found the most surprising. Like, it's almost like a church service for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
and this is not like Linus telling this, like reading the scriptures for like 2 minutes. This is a whole long
sermon.
sermon.
yeah,
Wow.
with musical interlude.
I guess they wanted to lure the audience in before.
Yeah.
But I
they
thought
drop
that
bomb.
the interesting thing was that the last, it seemed like 15, 20 minutes straight, no commercials.
Yeah.
Like the whole end piece was not disrupted by commercials
I think that
at
was
all.
pretty common, though. Like you would do. It's funny because it's now the model is
opposite.
switched.
The opposite,
where
yeah.
you get people sucked in, and then you start showing commercials pretty heavily.
First time I noticed that was Oprah Winfrey show. They
Yeah.
really used to backload the commercials.
So Woe Yuletide Me, or what Woe Yuletide Them, is the idea for the theme is from it's like an old English.
Well, I'm glad we
phrase.
talked about this show for about 20 minutes before we really talked about what the theme of the episode is.
So woe betide them or woe betide you means like may bad things happen to you. So like woe betide you should you.
So in what context would somebody say that? Like when they're like, "Ooh, shaking the fist, shake your fist harder, boy." Like woe betide you.
Like your kid is like gonna get in the cookies and you go woe betide you should you get into those
Oh, it's
crackers,
kind of a warning.
boy.
It's kind of a warning. Okay,
yeah, so you
gotcha.
say to your
So it's like something a hermit would say to
Yeah.
like the Scooby-Doo
So
kids.
in the like if you go to like Francis Child's like collection of old English ballads from Appalachia,
right,
Yeah, you check that out of your local library.
it's online on Project Gutenberg now.
Okay.
But
so when you do that,
you'll find a lot of like uses of this phrase. One of my
will
favorite uses
find.
of it is in the Sandy Denny's Tam Lin version where the fairy queen says, "Woe betide your ill-fought face, and well, the May you died." When I saw
so
it,
Sandy Denny feature on one of these episodes last year, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
You featured
But
Sandy Denny.
anyhow, she's cursing out
Ah.
young Janet, who has stolen away her prize human knight, who she was going to sacrifice to hell because they pay a tithe to hell every 7 years.
That's great.
And now the old gods are coming back. I
Yeah.
guess, yeah.
So
woe betide means like kind of a little bit of a warning of a curse kind of thing.
yeah, I think with this, what I was kind of playing with,
and
was
you
like,
shuffled that with Yuletide.
yeah,
Yeah,
well, Yuletide them.
That's some.
So it's sort of like, I don't know, I guess it would be like some sort of tale of warning in a Christmas form. So maybe we're
well, I
warning
mean, in a
you.
way, isn't that what's the Scrooge, the
Yeah.
Christmas Carol's all about?
Yeah.
It's a woe betide, like
It's a lest you go to hell with the Marleys.
unless you buy that goose,
Hmm.
fix Tiny Tim's legs.
What I love about this is a tangent, but what I love about A Christmas Carol is that it really is kind of selfish at the end. Like, it's not like Scrooge has a change of heart because he sees like, oh, like these people are having a great time, or like I had a great time in the past, but then like I changed. He only like really changes when he sees that he's gonna die alone.
Threatened with death.
And then he's like, oh shoot, I better straighten up now.
It wasn't like someone was like, your choices are hurting other people's lives.
Exactly.
That didn't do it.
No.
That's when he's staring at the grave.
He's just like, I'd like to have a couple people at my funeral.
Fine, I'll buy the goose.
He's just trying to buy off Cratchit
Yeah.
at the end.
Yeah, he starts a super PAC and gerrymanders the town, and just kind of like does a workaround.
Yeah.
But so back, so is this choice then kind of a warning to people? Your choice, the Mr. T and Emmanuel Lewis Christmas special.
I think it's a little more like it's old timey language and this weird like television specials or other specials for me, like sort of like the pleasant secularization of Christmas kind of thing. Like there was always a message in there eventually, but for the most part, like when I was a kid, I wasn't focusing on Linus's talk during that Christmas special. Like,
you just wanted him to dance.
Yeah, and I liked the animation and I liked the tone and the music as he told the tale, and it was like there was something nice to it. And I don't know, maybe maybe the woe is that they're gonna slip in subtle Christian propaganda. Watch out! It's gonna get you.
There's gonna be a little Jesus mixed in.
You
with
thought
your
you were gonna watch
Kris Kringle.
a tiny 12-year-old boy and a giant bouncer wrestler man hanging out, but no.
It's also like strange. It's a strange mix of stuff. It kind of seemed like, oh, well, what can we get? Oh, well, there's an ice rink right here. Let's get a couple ice skaters, and we'll watch that for like 10 minutes.
It was run and gun style Christmas special.
It's also like of that classic period where it's just like what a cavalcade of stars.
Yeah.
Like who can we get? Who's around? Who will agree to be in this thing? And they all like show up in like little circles, when they're promoting the thing.
They
like,
turn toward
David
camera.
Copperfield.
Yeah.
It's it might as well be the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Yeah.
In the way they're like,
exactly.
and this person, but it's in a story.
It's also kind of parade-like in that they just kind of they're just here and gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Within the story.
They just pass through.
The Star Wars Christmas special is a good example of that, where they're just like, and we got Art Carney too. Let's throw him in there. Don't worry, he'll figure out something to do that's funny.
Couple weird things. There was like one.
Just a couple though.
Yeah, there was one like weird laugh track moment.
Yeah.
When Mr. T told a joke and when they first enter the chapel, kind of backstage.
But they're rehearsing for a Christmas special.
Right.
Right? So I think when he's there, it's suddenly the audience is there, right? Is that a Gary Shandling show moment or something?
I don't think there was like even it was just like a bunch of
because
people.
there is the audience at that point. Because when he's giving the sermon, they show the audience and they're all kind of like, they're all kind of like nodding along and silently amening.
And that's the second thing. He does, Emmanuel Lewis does this weird like head bob kind of thing. And it's super weird. And
At what
creepy.
point?
Like he's sitting on somebody's knee near the end, like I think on Maureen McGovern's knee. And he just like does a little like,
I will say there's a scene where Emmanuel Lewis sings a Christmas song. And his dance moves are on point. I'm like, way to go, Emmanuel Lewis. I wish he had concentrated more on the singing. It seemed
he had
really...
a couple before he was on Webster. He had a couple like tracks that charted in Japan.
What, before he was on Webster?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I need to hear those.
I don't know. One I think is like Mr. Don Don. So it's like the second one is like more Japanese oriented, but
that's awesome.
The first one I don't think is. When I'm pretty sure I didn't see this whole thing when I was younger. But I do remember the Rockefeller, what are they called? Like
skating rink?
Nutcracker dance. The like soldiers, the toy soldier dance, and where he shot them over. That I'm pretty sure that was in commercials for the show, and that I did.
How old
see
would
when I
you
was
have been when this came out? Probably 6, right?
Yeah, like 5 or 6. Yeah, 6. So I definitely remember
very formative.
Yeah,
very formative years.
And I remember like we had a VHS with some of like similar commercials, like because that's why I liked watching this kind of show because it's got the commercials in there. And I remember you watch the Halloween, the Charlie Brown Halloween, and there's like a Zingers commercial, and so I always associate Zingers with the Charlie Brown.
What are Zingers?
Pumpkin.
Is that a game?
No, they're like a pastry cake, like a Twinkie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they have like
they're Twinkie, but with like the red.
Yeah,
coconut
there'll be
stuff
red
on.
coconut,
Yeah.
or there's ones that have like a frosting along the top.
That's a Massachusetts thing, I think.
We had it. They were in the Midwest too. They
Oh,
have
yeah?
them. You
Okay.
can get them down here.
I used to get them at Store 24 in Boston. That's why I associate them with that.
But yeah, Zinger. So the commercials though, because they used to make jokes on 30 Rock about like GE and NBC, and the first 2 commercials are GE commercials, like back to back, like a microwave and a dishwasher or something like that. So
I loved those commercials with the like synthesizer on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were really neat. The synthesizer sounds were really cool. That I would say that the commercials were the highlight of this pick for me. And so sadly we can't kind of recommend those to people because the link is probably not legal to put out there. But
I think it's the only way to find it though. Is
maybe
to, like, go online.
But the watching it and seeing the like old He-Man, there was a He-Man commercial for like
it was the Fright
Fright Zone, yeah.
From She-Ra, yeah.
I'll see the version I watched a different version that didn't have the commercials. I missed
Oh
out.
man, you blew
Really?
it.
Yeah.
See, I saw the commercials, but I love old commercials, but I made the mistake of skipping over them because I was so annoyed that John was making me watch an hour of Emmanuel Lewis and Mr. T in the first place. That I was like, I got to minimize the time I spend on this thing.
My technique was to watch the kind of in between stuff, and anytime there was a song, I'd listen to about 2 minutes of and go like, okay, I'm done with that.
Yeah, I get the idea.
Yeah, let me get back to them commercials. It did seem like there were fewer commercials. Do you think if you take an hour of programming from 84, and then an hour of programming from now, is it the same amount of commercials?
No,
I have a feeling there's like 2 minutes more.
It's
each
increased
30
over
minutes.
time.
Yeah.
You also were missing the head and tail commercials. There was like a teaser at the beginning, but it went like right in.
So it was like a cold open at the beginning?
Well, you would have had commercials between the shows.
Gotcha.
I don't know why it just cuts directly to the like NBC.
Because somebody just hit record when it started.
That's my pick. I would say to get a snapshot, like it's not like a great look of New York in the 80s because it's not like that area. It's not like Giuliani fixed up Rockefeller Center or something in the 80s. It's not like it got any different. It's kind of like that was always, that like a kind of little pristine pocket.
Giuliani wasn't mayor in the 80s either. So
no, well, actually, the mayor does show up in this.
Yeah, Koch, yeah.
Oh boy. What is
and featuring Ed Koch.
Is he just like, what was he doing? Putting like $1 into the bin or whatever? All right, he's donating some money, of course.
Handouts. I guess because if this was Times Square at the same time period, like it was a much grittier place.
Yeah, not
like Rockefeller
not
Center.
friendly.
Yeah. What were your guys' impressions of this?
It really reminded me watching it of like, wow, I do remember how crappy these things were. Like the acting is like they're just
Wooden.
like, we got it. It's in the camera. We got it. No more takes. You're done. These people are just kind of like, hello, how are you doing? Good. The spirit of Christmas. You're acting awfully, humbug, like they're just nobody is kind of natural in it that I found. Though the guy who has the ventriloquist dummy, I think, is really good, is up to task, and Maureen is okay. Yeah. But her how she fits into this is just makes no sense to me.
It's my friend Maureen.
Yeah, that's it. That's the only connective tissue. Just my friend. And do you think it was supposed to be a reveal that he was Mr. T because he kept a hat on at all times and you didn't see his hairdo until the very end when he?
Yeah, I think so.
Was that supposed to be?
Even when the earliest time, like the ventriloquist like whips out a Mr. T puppet, and he's like, I don't like that one, and then they kind of face off, and
the
Mr.
like, get a better haircut.
He says, I only got one thing to say to you. What? Merry Christmas.
Yeah, it's like earlier in the special, he's playing a character.
Yeah.
And then when they do the last segment, he's actually
in
Mr.
a suit.
T.
He's Mr. T.
It's like the story time.
So do you think that the narrative of the story is that this kid doesn't recognize that it's Mr. T? And he's like, I want to help this kid, but I can't let him know it's me, Mr. T? Like, what? I don't understand, like, narratively why that choice was made.
Well, he's a latchkey kid.
Oh, yeah? This is the first I heard you mention that.
It's important to note that his relationship to adults and like how he views adults, they're all kind of like a blank mask to him. So he doesn't, like, Mr. T is just like any other.
Just another big person.
Could as well be another male patriarchal figure.
May as well just be his dad.
Yeah.
For all he cares.
In fact, he knows it's not because he's talking to him.
So when you came up with the concept of Woe Christmastide, whatever. Yeah, there you go. Did you go like, oh yeah, that Christmas special? How did you arrive at this Christmas special?
Because I thought back on like, all right, I don't want it to be like, because I could do, I want it to be like, these are not always the best. Like, maybe don't watch this for Christmas could also be the other way to interpret this pick.
Which is what our show is all about, right? Here's things not to watch.
Yeah, we want to recommend that you don't go to this. But
hey, it might be new to you.
That's
Right.
I think if you wanted a nostalgic pick to kind of like hang out and watch, or even to like if you're younger to see a snapshot of a time when when the big three ruled the airwaves and all these stars and stuff, these guys are 2 years into their career and they're getting an hour-long special, and everybody had specials.
Yeah, but I think by that time Mr. T had Serial. I'm sure already
Really?
had
By
his
then?
animation
Animation
started.
came a little bit later, but yeah, it was.
And A-Team, I mean, A-Team was really big. I mean, that was not
but again, A-Team had only been out for a year by the time they did this.
I don't want to discount how charismatic Mr. T is, because Mr. T is very charismatic.
Mm-hmm.
But
He's
at the
really
same
good.
time, it is funny that there was like a time in history where basically like all you needed to become an icon, like a multimedia icon, was a distinctive haircut and voice and manner of dressing. You know?
And charisma.
Yeah, well, he has got the charisma. I'm
Well, he
saying
was also
don't discount
bodyguard
that.
for a
But
long
he's
time.
got charisma, but he's not got natural acting chops.
No.
Like he can
no.
play he was great as Clubber Lang, but like this stuff when he's trying to kind of one-on-one with Emmanuel Lewis, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
It's not his wheelhouse.
Well, I think also he was learning on the job how to be an actor, you know what I mean?
back in the late 90s, early 2000s, Conan O'Brien kept doing a lot of stuff with Mr. T, where on his show he would just have him on, and he would, they would go on these like location, scenes together. That's like when you see Mr. T's charm. He's like just a
He's
cute monster.
some trivia.
He's a bear.
He's a born again Christian,
Mm-hmm.
and he sold all of his gold chains and gold after Hurricane Katrina, and
Oh, wow.
and
And
donated
then
that
bought
way.
a big boat.
A gold boat.
Really should have waited for the second part of that sentence before.
So I'm assuming he donated some of the money to.
He sold the chains. I can't speak to what.
No, he just thought they were kind of gaudy afterward.
He's like, well, if I'm in a flood, these are going to weigh me out. I better get rid of them.
No, he just wears a floaty.
He can still expose his arms.
And was he on like a reality show too at one point? I feel like there was like an era of like
Maybe
like-
one of those, not Celebrity Apprentice, but one of those ones where like
They're all
Mini
hang
Me
out.
is hanging out.
Yeah.
Maybe in like the surreal
That's
life
the
or
one
whatever.
I'm thinking of. Yep.
I don't know if he was though. We're just like making stuff up.
We're just naming a show that he might have been on if he was on reality TV.
Dan, what'd you think of A Christmas Dream?
I agree about the quality of it, about how this was a relic of a certain time period in television history. It kind of makes me think about how, I've got a certain amount of nostalgia for older TV era as a TV professional writer. Like, I think about, it was a lot harder to get a job in some ways back then because there were fewer opportunities, but at the same time, not everyone wanted to be a TV writer back then. So, like, it evened out a little bit, I'd imagine. But the thing about it back then was you could get on a popular television show and that show would run forever and everyone would watch that show, and you would make $1 million being a writer, and
For the Dom DeLuise show.
exactly.
Yeah.
And now, so I have like this nostalgia for like, oh, wouldn't it have been great to be a writer back when like networks were king? But then you see something like this and you're like, the great thing about there being choice now is that things of this quality aren't really made anymore.
Yeah.
Like, there's terrible television, don't get me wrong, but there's a level of competence that.
There's a bar. There's a bar.
Exactly.
Yeah, now you have to maybe go to YouTube,
Well, the Netflix thing that they were trying to capture this kind of feel in that Bill Murray Christmas thing
Mm-hmm.
that
yeah.
Coppola
Like a
did.
variety thing.
and Colbert also did like a Christmas special that
Yeah,
had
but
that
I feel
kind of
like
vibe.
his was
Was
like
good.
way better.
Yeah.
I don't know what they were doing with and maybe it just wasn't for me. But the
Was
Bill
it
Murray
Lawrence
thing was
Welk
not.
or one of those guys would have like an annual Christmas show?
Lots of people like
Yeah.
Dean Martin did for a long while.
or maybe the
Bing
Bill,
Crosby.
maybe with the Bill Murray special, they were a little too close to what they were. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They went native.
Yeah.
You know, that the really famous David Bowie Bing Crosby thing. I think that was a part of one of those Bing Crosby Christmas special things. You know.
Yeah. Jules, what'd you think?
I thought it was random and a bit and pretty boring.
Yeah.
And yeah, it did remind me of other specials of the time. But I actually like kind of missed that period because I was in France. But it was even worse in France. Like,
Oh, really?
yeah, yeah. Because I mean, like, you know, it's a smaller country. There's less talent, I guess, to go around. There's even less money. So it's like every TV show was like a bad special almost. Like everything was like talk shows and variety shows because that's what you could afford to do. And
You didn't have
everything else.
writers. Like,
But we did have, you know, the A-Team. It was just dubbed, you know.
Right.
Oh, speaking of Mr. T, I tweeted something recently. It was terrible, but I feel compelled to repeat it here since we're talking about Mr. T. It was, I pity the fool long, and it was Mr. T, T-E-A. And I got a string of response tweets that were just, ugh, ouch, no, ugh. And I could not have been happier because I think that there's nothing a comedy writer likes more than to tell a truly bad joke.
So when you did it, was it F-ooh?
It was F-oolong.
Yeah, nice.
It doesn't really work otherwise. It doesn't really work said like the way I said it. I mean, it doesn't work as a joke at all. Let's be honest.
No, in written form.
In written form.
You
Yeah.
got it.
To that end, if you were being like, hey, kids, we're going to sit down and watch Christmas specials and like force them to enjoy some Christmas specials, would this be
Kids,
on
come
the
into my
list?
van. Check out some Christmas specials.
I think pretty much it's a genre that can mostly be avoided. And it's a safe bet to not watch Christmas specials.
What?
Except,
I would
there's
say
a
there are
few-
better-
There's
there-
a few
there-
exceptions.
Yeah,
but
and they've-
they're
and
few and far between.
That's why you don't watch new ones. You just watch the ones that have stood the test of time. So it's just like, hey, there's a new Christmas special. Well, let me check it out.
Yeah.
After it's been through the Peanuts Christmas special, like time machine, you know.
Yeah.
There are 4 ones I genuinely like. My 4 are obviously Charlie Brown Christmas,
Oh yeah.
How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Those are 2 very uncontroversial choices. I like Christmas Eve on Sesame Street, which doesn't get aired that much anymore, if at all. But it was a very fun special. Santa Claus is Coming to Town, which is one of those puppet
Rankin.
animation ones.
Rankin and Bass.
Yeah, but it wasn't. I like it better than Rudolph.
Was that Heatmeister or is that?
That's the one that's basically like Santa Claus's origin story. It tries
Yeah.
to like explain every element of Santa Claus.
He's like a young ginger
Yeah.
running around.
Mm-hmm.
Like I guess I was thinking of like Christmas specials, like stuff like more variety type shows,
Right.
Like things that were. But I guess I don't really know how to
Like
define
what?
a Christmas special. exactly.
Yeah.
No,
But I guess
variety
more with,
show
like,
is a real.
guests-
Yeah, that's
with guests
that's a real.
and stuff. Because those are like I consider those Christmas classics
Right.
that are
Well, sure,
played
but at
around
one
Christmas
time
every-
they were meager
specials?
meager Christmas specials.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, the Peanuts is best. So
Yeah.
good.
Well, I mean, the soundtrack really
It's hard to see. Yeah,
sells that.
and that's still like on if you're making your Christmas mix, it's going to be on there. But it's hard to say if there's much of a pantheon. I think that's about it. I mean, can we? Even ones that aren't on the pantheon, can we think of notable ones? I mean, there's the
Well, Miracle. Oh, wait, that's a movie.
well, yeah, the movies don't count like Christmas Story and
Mm-mm.
Christmas Vacation and
yeah. So
Die
I mean,
Hard.
that's a question too. Like, is Rudolph a movie or a Christmas special?
it's a Christmas special because I think it's only 30 minutes.
Really?
I think so.
It might be an hour, but it's definitely no longer
It's
than
not a
an hour.
90.
Rudolph and Frosty's New Year might be a 90-minute one, but I'm not sure.
The Rankin and Bass Christmas special, like these guys, like almost like a sure thing.
Right.
They did so many that were good. Who's filling that? Who's filling that spot?
Christmas in July was a TV movie. That's the one that was movie link. Rudolph
And that's a-
Frosty's Christmas in July.
Did they string the stories together, or was it a new narrative?
It's a new narrative.
I mean, this is something we might
know if
talk
I've
about
seen that
across all the picks too. Is like, I don't know if you would have such a like religious primetime special anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I think
I think you do. I think
But it would probably be on
Especially
a
right
niche-
now.
Maybe it would be on a niche cable network.
no.
You know
I
what
think
mean?
that there's like it's two stubborn sides. One stubborn side's like, well, they don't want me to mention Jesus, so I'm gonna talk just about Jesus.
Mhm.
We got to put the Christ back in Christmas type of thing and be mad at Starbucks for their cups.
But do
And
you
then there's
think
the
that-
other side who's just like, I don't want to seem like I'm pandering to those cup hater guys,
Right.
So
But do you think they would do that on a major network? I think it would be maybe on a niche network.
I mean, let's watch the Colbert thing. I guarantee you he's got some religious stuff because he's a religious guy.
They didn't even want a Charlie Brown Christmas. They didn't want that. Like, they didn't want Linus to do the monologue, but Charles Schultz was like, that's kind of the point of the thing.
So they wanted it like straight commercial all
Yeah.
the way through.
Well,
No. He's anti-commercial all the way through.
Well, no, but the idea is that if you took away the
Lucy,
monologue,
the problem is Christmas.
yeah.
If he didn't have the monologue, I guess the Great Pumpkin would have to come.
Yeah. I mean, I
Save
feel like there are
Christmas.
some songs that, like, they'll mention Christmas or, like, Oh Holy Night, stuff like that, that would make it into a show now. But, you know, like Grey's Anatomy's Christmas special has Oh Holy Night, but it's because they're using it because it's Christmas instead of Hallelujah. You know, it's like there's religious imagery in those songs, but there's not. They're secular songs because of the play that they get. And, like, Soda Pop Santa, your red and white Santa Claus is like a commercial secular figure, right?
Except he was a saint, bro. He was a saint.
He was when he was St. Nicholas covered in rags and like putting ducks in wooden shoes or whatever he used to do.
What? Is that how he got famous?
It just makes him sound like he's a crazy person. Well, that's old St. Nicholas. He just loves putting ducks in wooden shoes.
He's harmless. Just go with
Well,
it.
that's it. He was just Nicholas, like special Nicholas.
Can I put a duck in your shoe?
Whatever,
Nick.
Santa.
Sure thing. God bless
Yeah,
him.
yeah. Tell us about how those elves are building these ducks too. I don't know. I think I like the tradition of Christmas specials. That there are more misses than hits, but I think the ones that get it right, I think are pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that's coming from an atheist.
Yeah, I think we've exhausted this one.
I'm exhausted.
Can find this online somewhere, like there's Daily Motion or YouTube will have it. Someone will have posted it. So it's not like an easy find you can't purchase it anywhere right now.
But it's called, what is it called? Christmas Dream.
Christmas Dream, yeah.
I bet you if you just type in Mr. T. Emmanuel Lewis Christmas Special,
you'll
it'll
find
probably
it.
pop up.
Yeah,
I mean, if you want. I mean, I don't think we're selling it very hard.
I think if you're like the kind of, you like decorate your house and you're having like Christmas morning or like the night of like a decoration party or something, it's like a good, like it would go in like a playlist of videos of like stuff that people aren't like watching. It just kind of runs in the background while you play music or whatever. And people go, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
Along with the Star Wars movie or Christmas specials and all those. And like the Rankin Bass
Silent Night.
ones. All
What is
garbage.
it? Silent Night, Bloody Night? What is that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think people should watch it.
Well,
Okay.
I'm glad you think that.
That's where I'm coming down. So I do recommend it for the commercials, but also for the weirdness. I like
It is awkward.
the weird characters and the weird pacing and
for its historical,
right.
relevance.
Mhm. Now that Mr. T is president, it's good to go back and see how he started.
It's
out.
also it's a major network television, and the two stars of the show are like African American.
That was pretty cool. I did like that.
So-
And thinking back is just like those were two of their biggest shows, and they, what happened? Was it the '90s that suddenly
TGIF.
maybe the Winslows were on TGIF, weren't they?
Oh yeah.
I don't know what happened.
So would you guys recommend this?
Probably not.
For someone who likes camp, if someone who's very into just weird miscellany, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think it's just my only problem is I like weird miscellany and camp and stuff, but it's just pretty boring. Is my main problem. It's just kind of long and kind of boring.
You ask yourself, if you've seen the Star Wars Christmas special and you're like, I kind of like that, then you should watch this movie.
Yeah, I guess that's a good.
Also, in 20 years, when the city is flooded and
Yeah,
if you want to see FAO Schwartz in the ice rink without like whatever
There's
jellyfish
just
or
alligators
whatever,
swimming
but
around.
you could also watch Big. That maybe that's a better way to.
That's a better way to
do
get
it.
FAO Schwartz.
Or Home Alone 2.
Yeah, but that wasn't FAO Schwartz, was it?
Oh,
No, but it's
man.
Christmassy.
Yeah.
What if Emmanuel Lewis
I'm
went
pretty
and
sure he
made the
went.
wish at Zoltar, and he was still Emmanuel Lewis, but he was like an adult, and everyone just treated him like an adult.
It'd be like Little Big.
Little
Man.
Big.
Little big man, it was Dustin Hoffman.
I know, but it would have been so appropriate for this imaginary movie.
And just as good as the Dustin Hoffman movie.
But he would still look down his pants and be like, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
Whoa. I'll get the top bunk.
Yeah, that's right. That's the one thing that grew for some reason.
Ugh.
All right, so that's enough. A Christmas tree.
Changed the entire world. And then the innkeeper said to Mary, "There's no room in the inn." You believe what this man said to Mary? Surely that was no way to treat a lady, especially a mother-to-be. But Mary had no choice, because it was prophesied that this birth would take place at this time in that place.
Such a question, there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Feel I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know it takes time, but I'm losing my persistence. The distance is too far to fetch, so I sketch on paper.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to another episode of the New to You Show. I was one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at Lord Joho and on Instagram at board_ghost. You can find my RPG podcast at boardghost.com, where we tell stories playing games. You can find my book club podcast at woundandstab.com. Keith, where can people find you?
You can find me on the internet at earthlingkeith.com and go listen to Wound and Stab. It's cool. It's a fun romp.
Yeah, what's the latest story or book? that you guys
We are
reading?
still reading House of Leaves, so by the time this comes out, we're almost halfway through. We've had some good guests. We had a guy on who works with our friend Adam at BBDO and is climbing in caves since he was in utero.
Whoa.
Like his mom
Was a
was in
spelunker?
caving, and they actually were caving in like southern New Jersey.
So he's a troglodyte,
He's
is what
a
you're saying.
troglodyte, and he's
Cool.
so for most of his life he has been in caves.
I want to see the math on that.
Yeah.
Not certain that that's entirely true.
But it's been good. Like the most interesting part, the surprise is that the interviews have been so like interesting and just meeting new people and talking to them about like their experiences and how that contextualizes what we're reading. So yeah,
Cool.
Uh,
And you can find me, Julian, on Instagram or Twitter at Beautiful Jules. How about you, Dan? Where can people find you?
If you want to listen to my podcast, The Flophouse, which I say my podcast, I've got two co-hosts, but who care about them?
Yeah.
They're not here. Yeah.
They're at, you can find it at flophousepodcast.com, and you can find me on Twitter at DANK McCoy. That looks like Dank McCoy. It's actually Dan K. McCoy. And, you can watch The Daily Show 4 nights a week on Comedy Central, and maybe a joke or two was from me.
and you had some animations.
Oh, yeah. If you want to see some very primitive animation that I did for a web series that lasted about 9 or 10 episodes. It's called 9 a.m. Meeting. I believe it's 9ammeeting.com. If not, you can just Google it.
Cool. Well, I will throw links to all that on the website. And you guys have a live show coming up on December 9th?
That's right. We'll be in San Francisco on December 9th. We'll be talking about the Emoji Movie. So,
Wow.
look for that.
Wow.
All right. So before we talk about what we're having next week and roll out of here, what's new to you, Jules?
New to me is it's an oldie, but it was new to me. I watched Werner Herzog's documentary Little Dieter Needs to Fly, which is great. I highly recommend it. It's basically this guy Dieter's life story, which is totally crazy. He was a pilot. Well, first he grew up in post-World War II Germany, then moved to the U.S. so he could become a pilot because he was obsessed with flying. Then he finally ended up in the Navy, where he was a pilot for the Navy, and went to the Vietnam War, where he proceeded to get shot down and became a POW in Laos, where he was treated most terribly, had a horrific experience. So it's incredible that he survived and isn't totally insane, considering what he went through. And he managed to escape and be rescued. And in the film, Werner has him go back to Laos and reenact with locals, a lot of the experiences he went through. And it's totally bizarre. And so I think his story had been told a bunch of times. And in fact, I think Werner also made a
He did.
fiction film that's based on it.
It's called Rescue Dawn.
Yeah, called Rescue Dawn, where he's played by famous actor
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale, thank you. So that's also based on the same story.
So
Yes.
so I remember when Rescue Dawn came out. When did this documentary come out? Way before that?
Yeah,
or-
way before. I think it's like like early 80s maybe. I want to say, I forget the exact year, but it's on Netflix right now.
Wow.
I recommend checking it out. It's just an unbelievable story, and it was told
Dieter needs to fly.
Little Dieter
Little
needs to
Dieter.
fly, and it's a story that was told a bunch of times because it is, and I think a book was written about it.
It's fantastic.
Just because it's just one of those stories it's hard to believe, but it's got that Werner Herzog touch to it. That
Is
just makes
Werner
it
on screen much?
No, you do hear him off camera a few times, and it's interesting because he has, I think, an narration, and you hear his voice, but it's like higher pitched because he was younger.
Is he speaking German to the guy?
Well, it's funny because they both speak in English with German accents because they both spent a long time in the U.S. And it was filmed mostly in the U.S. and Laos. Yeah.
All right, so that's on Netflix.
Yep, it's on Netflix.
All right. So next week, we're going to go into Keith's pick. We're going to go into the Ventures Christmas album.
From 1961.
Yeah, it's pretty early 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. So you can find that on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere music can be found. You can.
If you want a sneak peek,
it's on YouTube as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you go check out the Ventures Christmas album and join us next week. You can find all of this stuff that we talked about on our website at newtoushhow.com, assuming I've updated it. And you can subscribe and rate and review on iTunes. We're also on most of your favorite listening portals. We're on Google Play and all that stuff. So, gang, may not be new. Maybe it was new to you.
Explosion sound.
This pitiful life is all about the music. This pitiful life is all about the music. This pitiful life is all about the music. This pitiful life is all about the music.
With him together forever. Without the limitation of time ever again. So the second coming of the Lord is not dead. They're two separate entities.